Goape is the film production company hired to make Bolsonaro's movie. By the way, they had never made a movie before. You know those money laundering schemes where you set up a company just to launder money? Yes, so the sole owner of the company is Karina. Gama is the owner of Goape, and she's also the owner of an NGO. So what happened? Karina won a public bidding process for distributing internet via Wi-Fi for underprivileged communities at the São Paulo City Hall from Ricardo Nunes, a Bolsonaro supporter. Do you know PowerPoint? You can add the mayor of São Paulo, Ricardo Nunes. Exactly. What happened? The police requested authorization to carry out searches and seizures, and the São Paulo court authorized it. The suspicion is embezzlement of public funds, money laundering. The contract she won, the bidding process, without ever having provided internet distribution services. She initially won the contract worth 108 million reais from the São Paulo city government. Then the federal police are also investigating, but the civil police who were first discovered 3 amendments. What is that? Andrea Gonçalves? 3 additional payments she received of 40, which totaled 49,000 reais. In other words, this contract ended up being worth almost 160 million reais to provide a service she had no expertise in. She had never worked with that before. So what did the police find out? That she hired another company to provide the service. Pay attention to this, everyone. She wins the bidding process. She doesn't have a company that provides the service. And then she hires an intermediary company to do the job. And there was this extra contribution, and she received in the end almost 160 million reais. And part of the money were paid without her having provided the service, almost 30 million reais. What is the suspicion? That this was a scheme used to launder money and to transfer money to the movie. Think of the movie this way, okay? This money didn't go to the movie. Because, like, let's suppose that the money really did go to the movie. And what the heck kind of movie is that? That received, according to Flavio Bolsonaro and Eduardo Bolsonaro, more than 60 million from Daniel Vorcaro. Now there's almost 160 million, not counting other financiers of the movie. And up to now, Flavio Bolsonaro hasn't presented the list of financiers. They said there were several other financiers and they had invested millions in the movie. What the heck kind of movie is this? Obviously, if that money went to the movie, nobody knows if it actually stayed in the movie. And this Karina, who was she close and intimate with? Mario Frias. Mario Frias, he was Bolsonaro's Minister of Culture and is now a federal deputy, a Bolsonaro supporter, and he is also the producer of the film, along with Eduardo Bolsonaro, who is also a producer of the film and also the film's financial agent. And besides the money from Daniel Vorcaro, which according to them ended up in the United States, in the fund that the lawyer Carlisto, Eduardo Bolsonaro's lawyer, owns. Here's the bottom line for you. The walls are closing in. Every day it becomes more likely that this movie was used for money laundering and embezzlement. Not only apparently from the scheme involving Banco Master fraud itself, but also from other frauds. Like this situation, which could be the latest fraud involving the City Hall of Ricardo Nunes, a Bolsonaro supporter from São Paulo, which according to all indications and according to the federal police, has all the signs of being characterized as embezzlement of public funds, using the movie as a money laundering scheme. And from there, distribute the money and stolen. That's what police are investigating. Let's take a look at some scenes here. Breaking news. NGO linked to the producer of a film about Bolsonaro is the target of an operation. This one here, Karina. Karina. And one of the people closest to Karina is exactly Mario Frias, federal deputy, former minister of culture under Bolsonaro, and who is the producer of the film Dark Holes about Bolsonaro. And this one here is the mayor of São Paulo. Everyone knows he was elected with the support of the Bolsonaros. He's also a Bolsonaro supporter. And from what everything indicates, we can already put him there on the PowerPoint, right? On the PowerPoint of the fraud. And not only did they get divorced, from what everything indicates, all of it using the movie to launder stolen public money, whether from pension funds or now from this bidding process that, according to the police, has all the hallmarks of fraud and was very possibly rigged. And where did the money end up? In the movie, which is a real laundromat for stolen money. Look here, the NGO of the producer Dark Rose transferred an amendment from Mario Frias, his lawyer, and Phantom Books. In this same investigation, actually not in this investigation, but there is an investigation at the federal police where there is suspicion of misappropriation of parliamentary amendments. Several million reais were diverted to the production company, which in this case went to the NGO. Because this Karina, she has an NGO. And this NGO received money according to the suspicion from parliamentary amendments. Look, Mario Frias again, from Mario Frias. Investigating this, the money that went to the NGO, the police already know that part of this money went to the movie. To the movie, you understand? And another part, Karina hired a company. Guess who one of the partners of this company is? Mario Frias' lawyer. So the suspicion is that he used money from parliamentary amendments using this expertise with intermediary legal entities and NGOs to pay his lawyer with money from parliamentary amendments, in addition to the diversion for the movie. This is a new discovery that we found out about, that leaked, and that we're now learning about through this investigation. This investigation is in the hands of Minister Flavio Dino. Okay? Now, there's something I'd like to point out and that I'd like to ask. Where is André Mendonça? Why do I say this? The federal police are already investigating this whole situation regarding Daniel Borcaro. And then the money, did the money from this possibly fraudulent contract with the São Paulo City Hall end up in the film? And if the money, like in my view, who should be taking action? It should be the federal police. But for the federal police to act, they need authorization. From whom? From André Mendonça. Then it gives the impression, I don't know if that's the case, just to be clear, but it seems like André Mendonça doesn't allow it. So the civil police of the state of São Paulo started to do it. Because within this whole environment, with the fraud involving Daniel Borcaro, the money that went to the film, there are people with special jurisdiction due to public office. Specifically, we already know exactly who it is, Senator Ciro Nogueira. And now, with all these revelations, we can also say that Flavio Bolsonaro is involved too. And they have privileged jurisdiction due to their positions. Just like Mario Frias himself, who is a federal deputy and whose entire investigation and situation must be handled by the federal police and submitted to a Supreme Federal Court justice, who in this case is André Mendonça. Could it be that André Mendonça is dragging his feet? And because of that, did the São Paulo court decide to authorize the civil police to do what maybe should have been done by the federal level by the federal police? No, I know there's the city hall. Yes. If this were left to the district, the Sao Paulo City Hall, the company, and the NGO, then it would be fine for it to be the civil police. But we know that this is connected with the Banco Master fraud. In the Banco Master fraud, some individuals have privileged jurisdiction because of their official roles. Do you understand? Andre, what should be done? Andre Mendonça should handle everything himself. And he should take the appropriate measures. But if he's not stepping up with perhaps the necessary firmness and attention, others will do it. That could cause future problems. Yes, Andre, it could. It could cause problems down the line. And I don't like that. I have to confess that I'm not liking this leniency from Andre Mendonça. I might be wrong, especially since I don't have access to everything that the federal police already has because it's under secrecy. I don't have it, nor should I have it. But it just seems like Andre Mendonça isn't doing what he should be doing. And it ends up that the civil police, meaning the justice of the state of São Paulo, starts to do it. And I reiterate, this could cause problems down the line, especially in the procedural field. Thank you. Then you ask Andre what should be done. Andre Mendonça should take everything upon himself, bring everything to himself, say that everything has to be handed over to the federal police, and take responsibility for it himself. This Karina, if evidence of this whole situation has already been found, she should already be in jail. Because to me, what is she? She's a front woman. She was chosen to open the NGO, to open the film production company as a front. The company never produced films. And now you come to tell me that she was responsible for making a film that soon we'll find out cost over 200 million reais. Because if all this money they're talking about that went to the film really went to the film, it's more than 200 million reais. So to me, she's just a front for the scheme. And the film was used as a tool to collect money from corruption, for money laundering and paying bribes. But when operations like this start happening and the justice system takes too long to establish precautionary measures, like seizing passports, using ankle monitors, preventive detention, and all that, the work of destroying evidence begins, coordinating narratives and testimonies and statements, and even witness coercion and witness intimidation. What are we talking about here, my dear? Billions of reais. Putting this whole complicated situation together with Daniel Vocaro, we are talking about billions of reais. If he were poor, black, and involved, he would have been in jail a long time ago. This is a problem with the justice system in Brazil. It is selective, maybe even racist, because white-collar criminals benefit from this kind of delay practically forever. Meanwhile, they're destroying evidence, coordinating testimonies, maybe even coercing witnesses. The federal police should be acting, but it's the São Paulo State Civil Police that's taking action. I repeat, the federal police can only act if they have what the civil police of São Paulo had, judicial authorization. So I want to share this very serious concern with you. Because this could lead to procedural defects later on, where there will be evidence against the criminal organization, but the evidence cannot be produced and used in the case files. That's what happened with Flavio Bolsonaro in the case he faced before the Rio de Janeiro court regarding the theft of his aides' salaries, the Rachadinha scheme. That's more or less what happened, which led to the evidence being nullified. There was evidence of the Rachadinha, of the embezzlement, but the evidence couldn't be used. But because they said that the trial judge didn't do things the way they should have been done. André Mendonça, to me, is putting an end to this. So put it up for me, please. Where is André Mendonça, guys? For God's sake, where is the Prosecutor General? Prosecutor General? Answer Alexander de Moraes. Let's see some statements about the situation. Look here.
Guys, the São Paulo Civil Police is carrying out an operation right now against the institute of the producer of the film about Jair Bolsonaro, Karina Gama. The net is closing in. Civil police investigating. Federal police too. And yesterday I contacted Interpol. International money laundering, because look, it's 134 million. Flavio Bolsonaro asked more caro for 134 million. We know that they have already paid 61 million to that Raven Gate fund, which is managed by Eduardo Bolsonaro, but there's more. We found out that Eduardo Bolsonaro and this same Karina Gama signed a contract in Hungary. There was more money involved there with a Dutch company. This case involving Mayor Ricardo Nunes is a police matter. Guys, these people were hired to install Wi-Fi hotspots. They've never worked with this before. Out of 5,000 hotspots, only 3,000 to 3,200 have been installed. In other words, part of the contract was not fulfilled. The contract, which was for 108 million, ended up being paid with addendums at 157 million. Look, that Karina Gama is going to be arrested. But the ones behind her are Flavio Bolsonaro, Mario Frias, and Eduardo Bolsonaro. These are the crime bosses. Because the money wasn't for the movie. The money they took for the movie was this money from the corruption in the São Paulo City Hall. That money was sent out of Brazil. I'm convinced. That money was money to conspire against Brazil, to hire law firms, lobbying firms in that campaign for the tariff hike, for the Magnitsky Act. The game is over for these people. It's a bombshell, folks.
The game is falling apart, right? And this is just the beginning. Just the beginning. Meanwhile, look here. Bolsonaro puts Pix family. Bolsonaro puts Pix in danger, says the Treasury Minister. The situation in the United States in classifying the PCC and the Red Command, and they really have to be destroyed. These criminal organizations have to be destroyed. Trump labeling them as terrorists, I've already explained to you that this will have negative consequences in the field of public security. I've already explained it to you. I'm not going to repeat everything again so it doesn't get boring. Trump's actions won't solve this, and it will also bring negative consequences in the economic field. And the Minister of Justice said that this could even block PICs. I explained to you in the 8:30 live that Flavio Bolsonaro is already out. The elite and the market don't want Flavio Bolsonaro anymore. Why, Andre? Because Flavio Bolsonaro is bringing losses to Brazil's economy and to the elite, to the multinationals in Brazil with this situation, because there are economic consequences as well. And the Minister of Justice just said that this could also have consequences regarding PICs. That's why I told you that Flavio is no longer fighting to overthrow Lula, because he's not going to overthrow him. Now he's fighting for a coup campaign, because even the elite and the market no longer support him. And this situation with the American government was the worst way he could shoot himself in the foot and hurt the right wing. Because part of the right is starting to wake up and understand that it's no longer possible to negotiate with the Bolsonaristas. They even bring losses to themselves, to the elite. And PICs could be threatened by this situation, which could bring negative consequences for Brazil. Let's take a look here.
Minister President Lula mentioned PICs, and I would like to know what risk the Brazilian government and the economic team in particular see for PICs. And I would like to know if you were approached a lot by financial market operators, by business people, and how you were approached by them. So what are they reporting to you, the government?
The first part of your question, Natuza, is about PICs. PICs is very misunderstood by a number of private American companies and companies from other countries that lost their position as intermediaries between business and individuals in Brazil. They lost a source of revenue. PICs is free, PICs is simple, PICs is intuitive. It became very popular with the public, and PICs is not exactly a product. PICs is a sovereign infrastructure of Brazil, and it's important to recognize that and protect our PICs. Other countries like Mexico noticed too. At the G20 meeting I attended, their finance minister said, look, PICs is sensational. We would like to understand what you did in Brazil so we can do it in Mexico. Other countries have reached out to us. So look, PICs is not exactly a product that will compete with North American companies. It is a payment infrastructure created in Brazil, innovative, and it needs to be valued and protected by us. What can happen in a very unreasonable way, Natuza, is that it can be considered, based on information that reaches the American authorities saying that gangs are using PICs, and therefore it's an attack on PICs. A suspension of PICs, a measure that comes from an American court that puts pressure on banks operating in Brazil and that receive payments with PICs. They start to face punishment simply for being part of this infrastructure, which is a sovereign national infrastructure, which is absurd. And we see that once again, right? We see this family going to the United States looking for electoral measures, which could once again cause a lot of damage, a lot of trouble, including to PICs.
So, because of these and other situations, the right has let go of Flavio Bolsonaro, and so has the center. The market doesn't want Flavio Bolsonaro anymore either. Because of these and other situations like sanctions, right? This classification of the PCC and Comando Vermelho could also bring economic sanctions from the American government and its allies against Brazil, right? But there's another situation, which is the issue of public security, and that's not positive either. As I explained to you, the exchange and connection between the federal police and the FBI breaks down because the FBI steps out and the CIA steps in. And the CIA doesn't communicate with anyone except with the Pentagon. So by the time we find out anything, they'll already be invading Brazil, dropping a bomb, or taking some drastic measure against Brazil, and we won't even know why or what for. And the federal police will be even weaker because they won't have the logistics and the information and intelligence connection they have with the FBI, or at least used to have. These situations should be considered not as public security issues anymore, like PCC and Comando Vermelho, but as a military matter for the United States. Donald Trump positions himself as the sheriff of Brazil. That's the situation. And that's unacceptable. This is a matter of treason. That's unacceptable, especially because think about it with me. Let me ask you a question. Bolsonaro was president for 2, 3, 4 years. Why didn't he classify Comando Vermelho and PCC as terrorists? Why didn't he take that measure? He could have. He had the majority in the National Congress, especially because of the secret budget, which he used to buy most of the representatives and senators. Why didn't he do that while he was president of the Republic? Because he knows it won't fix the problem. And it doesn't solve it. It doesn't solve the problem, it creates more problems, and it even opens the door for an invasion by a foreign government without any explanation. And you should understand that the only people who support this are those who have no understanding or knowledge at all. Let's now hear from one of the top experts in criminal organizations who actually lives with at least 5 police officers 24 hours a day because he is targeted by criminal organizations precisely because he fights against these criminal organizations. Look here at what he also said here on Global News. And it didn't help. It didn't help. Here, look, Gatchaya, what does he say? He is a public prosecutor, a senior public prosecutor. Pay attention to what he says here. And he explained the situation here.
Mexican cartels have already been classified as terrorists for many years by the United States. Yeah, Colombian cartels, criminal organizations from El Salvador, the Maras, Mara, MS-13, the Mara Salvatrucha, have already been classified as terrorists by the US government for many years, right? Yeah, and as far as I know, in those countries, in Mexico, for example, in Colombia, and even in El Salvador, that there has been, for example, a decrease in the power of these cartels and these organizations because of the classification given by the United States, right? So I noticed that here in Brazil, at least a part of the population, maybe even driven by this politicization of the topic, they think it's a good measure because it will put an end to the PCC, put an end to the Comando Vermelho. And look, that didn't happen in Mexico, it didn't happen in Colombia, and it didn't happen in any country here in South America, right? This is an internal classification for the United States. I even think, I dare say it's more of a geopolitical interest than an actual effort against organized crime, because it will definitely bring sanctions and economic losses to Brazil's financial system, right? And then it's also a risk to sovereignty because, as I said, this issue moves into the sphere of the CIA and military special forces. It's about people. There could be some kind of secret action, right? Covert CIA operations, as has already happened in Mexico, for example, and other countries here in South America, and that would deal a fatal blow to Brazil's sovereignty. So I see this with a lot of concern, but I don't see any positive aspect, in my opinion, in this classification. Thank you.
This guy here is one of the people in Brazil who has fought high-ranking PCC operatives in every kind of situation you can imagine. He has been sentenced to death by all these criminal organizations, and today he has an extremely restricted life, not being able to go out, and when he does go out, it's 24 hours a day with a team of police officers to ensure his safety because he has been sentenced to death. And he is one of the main people responsible for putting members of the PCC and the Red Command, especially the PCC, in jail. And he's saying that this won't solve anything. This is a geopolitical issue. What does that mean, Andrea Gonçalves? Trump wants to use this to get benefits from the Brazilian government. He wants to blackmail. He wants to intimidate Brazil. That's what he wants. And besides that, any situation that comes to his mind. Like I told you, secret agents from the United States will come in here, depending on what they say. For the Pentagon will organize military actions and they will carry them out here in Brazil. And no one will be able to do anything because we don't have the military power to face the United States in Brazil. No Brazil. You might ask, Andrea Gonçalves, what about the Brits and China? My dear, everyone minds their own business. Even though these other nations might speak out against it and say that it's not right, that it's wrong, no one is going to take military action against the United States, truth be told. So the Bolsonaro family, they act as conspirators against our sovereignty, and that's actually a crime. Especially because all of this started a long time ago. And Bolsonaro said that he made a dossier with Brazil's secret and confidential information. And he said, no, it was me, and he handed it over to the United States. I want you to understand that this has nothing to do with fighting the PCC or Comando Vermelho. If Tranquera wanted to fight this, he would fight it in the United States where he can't handle it. Today, the drug trafficking situation in the United States is an epidemic. Families are suffering because their loved ones are completely trapped, enslaved by addiction, by drugs, and they can't solve this there. So all of this is just an excuse to interfere in Brazil. Because they want our Amazon rainforest, they want our gold, they want our oil, they want our rare minerals. That's what they want. And this is a tool to pressure the government. That's it now. This coming from Trump, it doesn't scare us that much. That's all he has to offer. Today, the United States government is openly and publicly robbing Venezuela for the whole world to see. They are stealing thousands and thousands of barrels of oil from Venezuela right now, and also Venezuela's gold. They said they went there to overthrow Maduro for I don't know what, blah, blah, blah. That Maduro really had to go to jail. He really did. I'm not defending Nicolas Maduro's regime, but this had to be resolved by them, among themselves, and not by a foreign country. Invading, saying they were going to arrest him because he's a criminal and acts like a thief. Because that's what Trump is doing there. He's stealing from Venezuela out in the open for everyone to see. He tried to do that. He's trying to do it with Iran, and he's already gotten into trouble with Iran because Iran has the ability to respond. They are being very smart in the war, and now with Brazil, it's because they want to steal from us too. And the worst are the nationals who call themselves patriots and are acting like real traitors to the country. And I'll say it again, it's a crime.